The other thing, the second big off the field storyline is coaching turnover. Only 2 of Butch Jones's original 9 assistant coaches remain on staff as he begins his 5th season. That'd be Gillespie, the running backs coach, and Thigpen, the linebacker coach. And just from last season, only 3 assistant coaches are in the same position as they were last season. Larry Scott's the additional. He moved from tight end coach and special teams coordinator to offensive coordinator. So just in the last one season, over 50% turnover on the coaching staff. Jones has talked yesterday about chemistry and communication. He's liking his coaching staff. He says they're much more teachers, vice presenters. So he had high praise for those guys. Tennessee's going to have their 3rd offensive coordinator in 4 seasons. As I mentioned, Larry Scott taking over the offense. Don't think you're going to see a little bit. I don't think you're going to see a lot of change. I think you'll see a couple tweaks. I think I'm pretty excited about Larry Scott, offensive coordinator. I think he's a rising star in the coaching ranks. So I think that it's going to be fine. Brady Hoke takes over on the defensive line. I think that's probably, with Larry Scott, the best addition. The best hire, I think, is going to be Charlton Warren at defensive backs. He's had some coaching. Of course, he's an Air Force Academy graduate, had some coaching at Nebraska and North Carolina, 2 really good defenses under North Carolina. He was coached by Gene Chizik, who everybody knows is a very good defensive coach. So I think he's going to have the biggest impact. Really excited about the Charlton Warren hire at defensive back. The biggest questionable hire was probably Mike Canales at quarterback, a long time at North Texas. He has worked with quarterbacks for a long history, but doesn't have a huge track record of developing super successful quarterbacks. So that's going to be one of those hires that Vol fans look out for. They're going to start nitpicking that one, the first sign of quarterback instability. You do also have, which I think is key, a new strength and conditioning coach. His name is Rock, and so you always look for that in a strength and conditioning coach. Hopefully he'll help with the spate of injuries and getting the guys a little bit stronger. They've talked about toughness. That's one of the 3 keys. That's one of 3 of Jones's keys for the spring: accountability, details, and toughness. So hopefully a strength and conditioning coach named Rock will help that toughness. By all accounts, he's doing a good job. I know that's a large turnover, over 50% of your staff in one season, but I do like what Jones has now. When he first got here, he brought a lot of his guys with him from Cincinnati, or guys who had worked with him before. I think at this point he's got a nice mix of young, up-and-coming coaches with energy and some guys with experience on the coaching staff. I like the combination he has on his coaching staff now. A couple guys, Larry Scott's and Brady Hoke notably have former head coaching experience. Like I said, Charlton Warren is a defensive back. He's got defensive coordinator experience. He's got recruiting coordinator experience. He's got special teams coordinator experience. He's got all the things you look for in an assistant coach. So a lot of fans are going to be looking at the coaching turnover. Of course, speaking of turnover, a lot of all fans are not. Tennessee has a new chancellor and a new athletic director. Of course, the AD hire was most people titled it a mishandled situation. Most people thought it was going to be either Blackburn or Fulmer. They went out and got Curry from Kansas State, who by all accounts didn't have the best relationships with Frank Martin, the basketball coach, or Bill Snyder, the legendary football coach. That adds to the season, the spring of discontent for Vol fans, program wide, not just with football, but across the athletic department. So we'll see how that goes. Like I said, Tennessee wraps up spring ball with a Thursday practice tomorrow, and then the orange and white game, which is kind of a modified practice format. It will be very similar to last year, Jones said yesterday. They wrap that up on Saturday. And that's kind of what it looks like out of Knoxville. Again, a lot of people are kind of waiting, not paying too much attention. They're paying attention, but not getting too excited for the spring. They're really focused on game 1 with Georgia Tech.
Charlton Warren played a significant role in turning around one of the poorest defensive efforts in the country at North Carolina. If you want to look at atrocious defensive stats, go back a couple of years and let's say collegefootballreference.com to North Carolina in 2014. Gene Chizik took over, as you mentioned, as defensive coordinator with Warren involved in that staff as well. And North Carolina was at least respectable playing defensive football over the last 2 years in the ACC. And we understand, Mike, as you well know, that Butch Jones was dedicated to putting the pads on and popping those pads considerably in practice this year, as opposed to most programs around the country backing off of contact. Butch Jones thought that having a little bit more contact would make for a tougher team mentally and physically coming up this fall.
Yeah, it's exactly right, Mark. Like I said, the three focuses for the spring, as Coach Jones articulated, were accountability, details and fundamentals, and toughness. They're really focused on finishing drives and the defense being resilient at the end of long drives. They've practiced 12, 13, 14 play drives with the defense and making sure that they're ready to go and make a third down, fourth down, goal line stand at the end of one of those 10, 11, 12 play drives. So that's the kind of toughness they're looking for. They hope that they can get their they hope they have better luck with injuries, and they hope they can get in better conditioning to avoid those injuries, but they're still working on toughness, both physical and mental. Coach Jones talked about that in his press conference yesterday, building both the physical toughness, having the bodies prepared, and having those not having mental lapses, having that mental toughness at the end of those long drives to win some of those close games that they haven't won over the past 3 or 4 years.